Unfortunately, the narrative that was left after that mission was that Rich Slabinski, who was the team leader in SEAL Team 6 Blue Squadron on that mission, took the credit for John Chapman's work that he did that day and the heroism that he displayed that day. And for, better part of 15 years, that was kept secret. And it wasn't until a ISR feed, which everybody knew existed, but there was no way to prove who was who. On the ISR feed, there was no way to identify individual people on the ground until some really smart people decided to use some SIGINT intercepts from there that was able to determine through frequencies who was who on the ground. And that's how they determined that John Chapman was the one that did all the valiant work that day.
Chapman, a U.S. Air Force combat controller, and the SEALs are attempting to rescue their lost teammate. You'll watch Chapman's heroic actions as he saves the lives of his entire SEAL team and then another 18 members of a quick reaction force, earning America's highest award, the Medal of Honor. Chapman and the SEALs exfil their MH-47 helicopter. John is the second individual to exit and immediately moves in the direction of the summit. He can be seen moving off to the right of the screen, alone. The team is taking heavy fire from every direction, as indicated by the arrows, as Chapman begins engaging targets. You can see spent cartridges ejecting from his M4. Chapman then begins closing with the enemy, forcing his way upslope in knee and thigh-deep snow. He is constantly under fire as he does this. Chapman's team leader begins to close on Chapman, following his trail through the snow. The dark mass above Chapman is a fortified bunker containing 2 enemy fighters, each armed with AK-47s, who are firing down on the team in the darkness. This bunker will come to be known as Bunker Number 1. To the left of the tree and Bunker 1 is another gray mass. This is a rock outcropping that came to be called the Boulder. Between Bunker 1 and this boulder can be seen the body of slain SEAL Neil Roberts, the man Chapman and the others are attempting to recover. Chapman, still alone and closest to the enemy, pauses to engage targets as his team leader follows him, but never actually catches up with him. Chapman, on his own, now makes the decision to charge directly into the enemy bunker, despite withering point-blank fire. Chapman, now literally on top of the enemy, engages the 2 combatants and kills them, saving the lives of the remaining SEALs. He does this from a distance of no more than 10 feet. These actions, by themselves, earned him his first Medal of Honor. He then climbs into and takes control of the bunker. Having cleared the immediate threat, Chapman is then joined by his team leader in Bunker 1. You can then see Chapman and his team leader engaging the next bunker, known as Bunker 2, which is situated to the left edge of the screen. This bunker, manned by a handful of Chechen and Uzbek fighters, also contains a heavy PKM machine gun, hand grenades, and rocket-propelled grenades. John Chapman is shot twice at this time in the torso and collapses, incapacitated. You are now looking at a new angle, and at the left of the screen can be seen the 2-man fire team and team leader on top of the boulder. Just below it is Bunker 1 with the mortally wounded Chapman. One SEAL can be seen firing his modified M60 machine gun from the hip into Bunker 2 on the right side of the screen until he is struck by grenade shrapnel and tumbles 10 feet off the top of the boulder, collapsing at the feet of his team leader, thus setting off a chain of events that would lead to the SEALs abandoning Chapman on the summit. The wounded SEAL and the team leader can be seen conferring about his injuries. Moments later, the SEALs decide to retreat from the summit because their position is untenable in the face of continued massive enemy firepower. They can be seen moving toward the right side of the screen and passing the body of Neil Roberts. Unfortunately, the SEALs do not pass John Chapman, who is above them and inside Bunker 1. This angle shows 3 SEALs in a triangle. The larger black heat signature is a smoke grenade. Just to its left is a donkey and dead Al-Qaeda fighter killed by Chapman. The steepness of the mountain can be seen as the SEALs begin to slide down the near sheer face. The team leader, desperate for relief and now with 2 wounded teammates, asks for uncontrolled airstrikes from an orbiting Air Force AC-130 gunship. The impacts you see are from 105mm howitzer rounds being fired onto the ridgetop in order to save the remaining SEALs. Because neither the SEALs nor gunship know Chapman is alive, he is experiencing these detonations from his position. At approximately 5:20 in the morning, Chapman recovers and begins to engage the enemy. Bunker 1 is on the right side center of the screen and Bunker 2 to the left near the screen center. It will never be known what caused his incapacitation and recovery. Of the 2 rounds that originally wounded him, at least 1 was mortal, and at this time he is experiencing severe blood loss and shock. Despite that, he begins his one-man stand against 24 enemy combatants. During this time, Chapman initiates a series of radio calls, many of which are heard by a fellow combat controller and teammate of his and Delta Force operators on a nearby summit. Despite this combat controller's replies, Chapman never acknowledges whether because of damage to his equipment or himself will never be known. This new angle and footage shows Chapman at the top, identified by the green dot under the tree at Bunker 1. The lower center of the screen shows the first enemy fighter who is about to charge Chapman in the hopes of killing the American. The timestamp at the bottom shows it is now 6:05 in the morning and fully light. He's been fighting alone now for 40 plus minutes and has received more gunshot and shrapnel wounds as a result of the fierce combat. This scene shows the second of several enemy charges. In this stunning display of determination and courage, Chapman can be seen fighting hand to hand with the fighter. In the larger screen display can be seen additional enemy moving on to the summit. But right now, John Chapman is fighting for his life. 6 minutes later, in this new shot, Chapman can hear another helicopter approaching the summit. He is in the bottom center of the screen underneath the tree and can be seen in the magnified inset box as he begins his desperate final stand to save the lives of the 18 men on the helicopter. The red dots are enemy fighters. John begins engaging the enemy in multiple directions and is rapidly approaching the last of his ammunition. The helicopter contains a quick reaction force comprised of Rangers, pararescuemen, and another combat controller. It is now 6:13 and the helicopter is short final. The enemy is desperately trying to displace Chapman so they can put heavy weapons or rocket-propelled grenades in Bunker 1 while simultaneously engaging the helicopter. With the choice to save his life or the lives of his unknown comrades, Chapman makes the decision to climb out of the bunker and begin firing in multiple directions as can be seen in the inset. Suffering from as many as a dozen wounds, Chapman is in fact already in the process of dying. As he fights, the helicopter is struck by a rocket-propelled grenade and makes a remarkable controlled crash just below Chapman and the summit. Chapman, now off-screen, continues to cover his comrades as they pour out of the stricken helicopter. Some of them are fatally shot as they exit. These images, with Chapman fighting the enemy at close quarter, are the last to show him alive and in this heroic act, thus qualifying for his second Medal of Honor. Ultimately, Chapman would expend all but the last few rounds of his ammunition, until, finally, after 16 bullet and shrapnel wounds, Chapman succumbs when he is shot through the heart. We will never know his final thoughts or words, but what we do know is his decisions and actions single-handedly saved the lives of 23 comrades.
Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to Beret Chronicles. Today I have Matt Kubler on. We did a couple episodes together, about 6 to 8 months back, where we talked about Logan Melgar, we talked about John Chapman, amongst other topics. If you guys haven't seen those, make sure you go check them out. Today we're back to discuss John Chapman in detail, specifically his Medal of Honor and how they are handling it at the museum. Matt, if you don't mind, for those who don't know who you are, can you please elaborate who you are and what your mission has been for the last 15 years?
Sure.
years that I would say about a year that I've met you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on again. I think it's an important topic that I'm thankful that I'm tapped into that world, so I know a lot about what's been going on with John and his Medal of Honor and all that. So my background is I was Army intelligence during the Gulf War, 89 to 93 active duty. Got out from the cop, was a cop for 30 years. Retired this past June. I did a little over 4 years as a U.S. Federal Air Marshal right after 9/11. But the last 5+ years, I've been investigating the suspicious death of Commander Job Price, who was the commander of SEAL Team 4, who was found dead in his bunk in Afghanistan in 2012. Was labeled a suicide, and over the last 5 years, at the behest of his family, I've been investigating that, and I finally have enough evidence to be able to prove that it was murder and not suicide. So that's kind of been my entry into the SEAL world, was investigating Job's death. But then through that time, I've cultivated many sources, and those sources provide me information on other things, such as John Chapman or Rob O'Neill or Jocko Willink or Mark Luttrell or whoever. I have plenty of sourced information on them as well that I've shared on many different platforms.
Now, on the topic of Commander Job, has any new information come to fruition? Because I know his father passed recently. I want to say it's about 3 or 4 months ago, without any closure. You know what I mean? Has there been any new developments, or you want to keep that on the hush as things develop?
No, I mean, yes, there are some things I have to keep close to my vest, but for the most part, I try to be as open as I can, because it's very important that people understand the level of cover-up that SEALs will go to try to keep the truth from coming to light. And with Job's case, it took 12 years for me to get to the point where I have enough forensic evidence from that has been analyzed by experts, independent experts who don't know each other in the forensic world, who have evaluated all the evidence and all came to the same conclusions that Job Price was murdered. All my efforts trying to investigate and do it as just a straight cop, there's a lot of things I don't know. There's a lot of things I know are wrong or didn't look right, but I didn't really know the science behind a lot of it. And thankfully, with all the exposure I've gotten over the last year on Job's case, through using other famous SEALs as my template to get Job attention, all this has sort of transpired. And from this also came a documentary film. And so we're in the development process of that now. And I'm excited for this to come out so that we can truly share to the world, not just Matt Kubler, the lone champion for Job Price, along with his sister, but that experts, people that in any court of law would be considered an expert and would be able to have their testimony taken as such, believe that Job was murdered. So it's a huge development that I wasn't really expecting to get this far with what I did, but I did, and I'm very thankful for it.
Absolutely. And I look forward to seeing how everything develops, because, again, man, it's just common courtesy. We're fucking owed answered, right? It is what it is at this point. Like, the least our elected officials can do is look into this and make sure that future sailors are safe, or future airmen and Marines and Army guys are fucking safe when they're operating together. So with all that said, let's discuss what we're here to discuss, which is John Chapman. Why don't you go right into it, Matt? Let me know what's going on and the injustice that's still taking place as it relates to John Chapman.
Well, hopefully everybody that's watching understands the complexity of the story and all that, but I'll give you kind of the 35,000-foot overview of the mission that was back in March of 2002, known as Robert's Ridge. Long story short, John fought valiantly, saved a ton of lives. Unfortunately, the narrative that was left after that mission was that Beret Chronicles, who was the team leader in SEAL Team 6 Blue Squadron on that mission, took the credit for John Chapman's work that he did that day and the heroism that he displayed that day. And for, better part of 15 years, that was kept secret. And it wasn't until a ISR feed, which everybody knew existed, but there was no way to prove who was who. On the ISR feed, there was no way to identify individual people on the ground until some really smart people decided to use some SIGINT intercepts from there that was able to determine through frequencies who was who on the ground, and that's how they determined that John Chapman was the one that did all the valiant work that day. SEAL Team 6 worked diligently to try to block any and all information about John Chapman's heroism from coming out. They created propaganda pieces. They tried to block actively. This is SEAL Team 6 and NSW actively trying to block John Chapman's Medal of Honor. And they, at the end of the day, it became Bret Slabinski. In order for John Chapman to get his Medal of Honor, Bret Slabinski had to get his. So Bret Slabinski got his Medal of Honor basically for doing, for lying about what he did that day. Not say that he didn't get into a gunfight and didn't charge the mountain and didn't do all that stuff, but the reality is John Chapman was the one that led that. He was the first one up the mountain. He's the one that engaged all the targets first. He's the one that was left on the mountain to die and then woke up and fought for another hour to save the QRF force coming in. But the attempts and the effort that not only just the lie, the cover up for 15 years, but also the effort to try to block the true hero from getting his Medal of Honor is despicable. And the best part of the story that makes it even more unbelievable is that the second half of the battle that John fought after he was rendered motionless and then came to or tactically stayed motionless, that there's some differing intelligence on that. I believe he was actually laying still in order to keep the belief that he was dead from the enemy, and then he woke up, started firing again, and that was made classified. It's public, but that's not part of his Medal of Honor. They said the only way that his Medal of Honor would go through if it omitted the second half of that event, which is the John Chapman, after he was left to die, got up and fought valiantly and saved the QRF. That was made classified. So the only thing that John's credited for on his MOH is the stuff that Bret Slabinski's claiming. Since that point in time, there has been a lot of movement to try to create a place where Medal of Honor recipients can be recognized and immortalized, for lack of a better word. And that's going to be down in Texas, I believe in the Arlington area, is the Medal of Honor Museum. And John's sister, Lori, John Chapman's sister, Lori, is a good friend of mine, and I've had her on my podcast when I had my podcast, and she's been a good supporter of mine as far as what I'm doing for Job. Well, she called me the other day, incensed over what she had learned about the Medal of Honor and how John was going to be treated at the museum. So one of the things that she was told when they were doing the construction phase is she went down to tour it. She was walking around. Whoever the guide was telling her exactly where they believed John's display, he would be featured as a featured Medal of Honor winner out of the, I guess, 3,500 that are there. They're going to do 200 displays within the museum. She talked to them, this person talked to them, explained how it was going to be all set up. Everything sounded and looked good as far as that goes. And then just recently she emailed someone at the Medal of Honor Museum and asked about, there's a grand opening happening at the end of March. So information on that and John's display and just a basic information request. And that's when she found out that they are no longer using John's story as one of the 200 displays, which is sad in and of itself. That alone, I mean, it's the only Medal of Honor ever caught on videotape. Right? It's recorded. It's the most provable of all of them. And it's sad that they chose not to choose John. But what's even more egregious is that Bret Slabinski, the guy that stole John's valor and covered it up for 15 years, is going to have his display for the events of that same day. So the guy that truly was the hero of the mission of Roberts Ridge in March of 2002 is just going to be somewhere on a wall you would have to seek out. And the one that stole his valor for 15 years is going to have his display with his citation, with his artifacts from that day on display for everyone to see, just to continue the lie that they've been perpetrating for so many years. And that's the most disgusting part, is that Bret Slabinski is being featured. And the reason he's being featured is because he's on the board of directors. It's insane.
Yeah, which that within itself should be a conflict of interest. And again, that's not to say that the other, 199 people that are being displayed is not deserving, or that they didn't do heroic stuff, right? Or that's not to say that the other 3,000 plus individuals that are going to be on the wall somewhere, that them too don't deserve to be up there. Agreed. It's just the facts surrounding this case. I'm talking about like the first recorded case of a man actually doing work. Like, we can go to YouTube and look at this man do work, right? The amount of lives that he saved, and the fact that, hell, man, it's been a while since 50, 60 years since the Air Force has had somebody. Absolutely. And not to take anything from the individuals that's earned the Medal of Honor doing GWAT, but when I listen to stories for John Chapman during the GWAT era, the last 20 years, that story stands out to me the most as the most heroic and the bravest shit that I've ever heard in my life. And watching that video solidifies that. So the fact that this man's not being featured just blows my mind, right? And well, again, that's not to...
The disgusting part is that they said they were going to do it. You know, the lie, the anticipation, the buildup for his family, that they were going to finally get the recognition that John deserved was going to happen at this museum. This is the living legacy that will be left for people to come visit for years to come, that John would finally get his day of celebration that's independent of anything else, not the whole backstory, how he got his Medal of Honor and how it was blocked and all that has so much drama behind it. This is the one thing that could have been, we're going to make this right, and we're going to give John his time to shine. And they said they were going to do it, and then never reached out to Lori and said, we changed our mind. If it wasn't for her emailing recently and finding out that they changed their mind, they would have let her believe and have all these people come down for this grand opening thinking that John was going to be featured, only to find out that he was not. And that is so fucked up. That is just abysmal humanity, and then the marketing of that is just, the optics are horrible. And the fact that Bret Slabinski is allowed to be on the board after what he did and the crime that he committed of stolen valor is reprehensible. And I get it. There is politics involved. The Navy SEAL brand is very, very powerful, and I know for a fact the Navy SEAL brand is very strongly behind the Medal of Honor Museum. So much so that, Bret Slabinski's is going to be the first display. I sent you a text. I have sources within the SEALs, and one of my sources was in a text with another guy who heard from a member of the board of directors that basically this is the Bret Slabinski Museum sponsored by the Medal of Honor, that he is controlling everything. He is the one with his fingerprints all over everything, and that the first thing you see when you walk in is going to be his display, and the last thing you leave when you walk out is going to be a picture of him as the president of the board of directors. And I think that is just... that makes me sick inside, because that is the ultimate betrayal, is that when you build a house for all these heroes and the person who is the most egregiously not worthy of getting the Medal of Honor is the one controlling all of the moves.
That is crazy, man. That within itself is some next level disrespect, in my opinion, not only to the other 3,499 fucking people that actually earned it, but to have him be the first one there and the last one, it just fucking blows my mind. So, in your opinion, what do you think happened? How did you think that went down? Do you think he physically changed the fucking plans to make sure that Chapman wasn't featured so he doesn't have to answer questions? Or, I know we're speculating here, but what exactly do you think happened?
Well, and again, this is just all from my sources who are affiliated with the people involved, and obviously I sent you the one text screenshot from the text, and I hope you use that feel free to use that in the show after editing if you want to add that in there so people can see it with their own eyes. I believe that the Navy SEAL brand, which has been corrupted and been involved in many, many cover-ups and crimes over the last 20 years of GWAT, to include Marcus Luttrell, to include Jocko Willing, to include Chris Kyle, to include Rob O'Neill, to include Sean Ryan. All of these people that are beneficiaries of the Navy SEAL brand. And Britt Slabinski is the Medal of Honor winner from them. He's the one that was part of the original sin, I call it. The Roberts Ridge is the original sin. It's the one where they figured out they could cover things up and get away with it. And I think they refused to yield. They refused to let the truth live without having their hand in the continued fabrication of what that truth is. And I believe that Tim Szymanski, who is the main ringleader behind all of it, his fingerprints are on everything that I just mentioned. Every mission, every bad failure, his hand is involved somehow. Job's death, his hand is involved in that cover-up. So when you see that, and Britt Slabinski was the team leader on Roberts Ridge, and Tim Szymanski was the operations officer who planned the mission. So it's very much a self-serving environment where they refuse to yield and let John Chapman get his day. And the Britt Slabinski, Britt was placed into the board of directors. There's a lot of naval influence within that, the Medal of Honor Museum, and it's a big thing because, like I said, it's a memorial. It's a place where people will go to honor the brave souls who got the Medal of Honor. And one amongst them, I don't know, I haven't seen all through 3,500 stories of how people got their Medal of Honor, but I know one that doesn't deserve one. That's Britt Slabinski, and he's a criminal who stole a brave, valiant Air Force combat controller's valor that day and continues to do so now. And my goal is that this goes viral. I know there's going to be other podcasts that do shows on this, but I'm the only one that provided you with a text chain from somebody who spoke directly to one of the board directors who said it's a shit show over there, and it's the Britt Slabinski Museum, sponsored by the Medal of Honor. And when you think about that's disgusting. That's the focus, is to highlight Navy SEALs. And if you want, I'm going to name every name on the board of directors from their website. If you don't
if you don't mind doing that, and then reading that text out loud that you sent me, so people can at least hear the text chain that took place.
So the board of directors are Charlotte Jones, who's the chairman, Peter Stent, who's the vice chairman, Christopher Cassidy, who's the president and CEO of the Medal of Honor Foundation, Major General Patrick Brady, he's a recipient, Colonel Jack Jacobs, a recipient.
All those guys all SEALs or different jobs?
That doesn't appear so. Those are military. The Major General, I'm going to guess Army, and the Colonel, I'm going to guess Army. Britt Slabinski, Navy SEAL, Medal of Honor recipient, the one who's stealing John Chapman's honor. Lieutenant Colonel William Swenson, recipient. Sergeant Major Patrick Payne, recipient. Deborah Burlingame, who's the 9/11 community leader. And Reed Cordish, who's a partner in the Cordish companies. Also, Thasunda Brown Duckett, Cami Goff, Mike Hayes, who was commander of SEAL Team 2 before Job. That's who Job relieved over on his mission before he was killed. Horrible deployment for SEAL Team 2 with Mike Hayes. He was forced to resign shortly after that deployment. Todd Higgins, Neil Liebman, Joel Marcus, Ryan McCarthy, Brad Meltzer, Doug Parker, Henry Ross Perot III, Jim Ross, who's the mayor of Arlington, Chris Sambar, Alan Schwartz, Nicholas Singer, Ambassador Craig Stapleton, Rex Tillerson, Alexander Tisch, Fawn Weaver, Jared Weinstein, Jeff Williams, and Matthew James. Now, I'm going to read now a text that was from a SEAL talking to another SEAL who had spoken to one of the board members, and this is what the text said. Slab's fucking over Chapman again. Chapman again is how this starts. And the response was, "Oh, did I hear about this? I heard about this from one of the directors of the museum. It's going to get ugly and it's going to kill the project. He said when you walk in, the first thing you see is Slab's exhibit, and when you leave, the last thing you see is Slab is the new president of the museum. He said it's the Britt Slabinski Museum sponsored by the Medal of Honor." The other SEAL says, "Fuck this. I hope it does kill the project. Pathetic." So this is within the SEAL community. These two SEALs are interacting with each other, and they're disgusted by the actions of one of their brothers, Bret Slabinski, and how he's acting, because everybody knows the truth. Like I said, it's the only true provable Medal of Honor award, because it's the one that was on video. And I think that's why everybody knows the truth, and the fact that the truth still is not important enough to be highlighted is the egregious part of this.
Dude, how badass of a display would that be if Chapman shit is up there and then the fucking video's playing? You know what I mean?
Oh my God, that should be like a big screen in the center, just on loop.
That would be fucking badass. But yet, here we are. Now, you read off all the names of the individuals that are on the president, or that are on that board. And there's, 2 or 3 SEALs on there? Dude, yeah. How the fuck are the other members able to let this happen? Do you think it's big money that's behind this and just kind of coerce them into submitting so this dude can get his way? Or like, how is this even fucking possible?
I mean, there's quite a few recipients on there, and there's quite a few business people and ambassadors and former secretaries of energy and things of that nature, and everybody wants to be part of something groundbreaking, right? Everybody wants to have their name associated with something as prestigious as the Medal of Honor Museum. So I think there is a lot of people that are willing to just be a name on a wall as part of an organization on the board of directors without really having to push back on things. But I know that one of the names I named on that list of board of directors is the one that gave that information to one of the SEALs in that text chain. And I implore every one of those board of directors to ask themselves, after they watch the John Chapman video, the 8 minute and 48 second video, and you can find on YouTube just John Chapman Medal of Honor video, and you can find it. It's an ISR feed that's narrated, and if it doesn't rip your soul apart, you're not human. But the fact that these people are willing to let the guy that stole his valor, it is not in question that he stole his valor. It's not. And that is the part that is so frustrating, is that it's not like there's a, well, he said, she said. It is provable that Bret Slabinski did not do what he claimed to have done for 15 years. And that's the sick part, is that these people are willing to just be associated with something without really caring about the factual basis of it in order to just have their name associated with something groundbreaking.
And what this does is it essentially diminishes and disrespects everyone else that's going to be featured in that museum. That's what it does, because when people go there and they don't see John Chapman display and they know the story behind it, that's the stain that's going to be on that museum, especially from the military community. That's the stain that's going to be on that. And that is such a horrible place to play politic.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And it's also, it's a, just like the Navy SEALs covering things up and turning complete failure missions into movies, it dishonors the guys that go every day in and out doing the raids, being part of a mission, that are doing good work in the special operations community. It steals from their truth, right? Their truth is, I went to work every day as a silent professional, did my job. But these guys who fail miserably, the Navy can turn it into some sort of a victory with Mark Luttrell or Chris Kyle or any of those movies that came out. They turn it into some sort of a war story, victory, feel-good story. And those things, and the murder of Joe Price, it all steals from the good work the guys, the majority of the guys in the special operations community are doing. And I had a conversation with one of the SEALs who I know knows the truth about Job, and he said to me, "I'll answer any question you have." And I said, "Okay." And I asked a bunch of test questions that I already knew the answers to see if he did. And then I said, "Okay, who killed Joe Price?" And he said, "Well, you have to understand this community and blah, 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 blah," and then circle the wagons, right? And I'm like, dude, you talk about the brotherhood, you talk about how you do this for the brotherhood, but you're allowing one of your brothers, Commander Joe Price, to be murdered and have it called a suicide when you know he didn't kill himself. Where is his brotherhood? Where are the people that are standing up for him? Where is the anger and the contempt for the people that could have done this? it destroys the fabric of the brotherhood. It doesn't make it stronger. There's no unity in lies. And that's the part that I think is happening. You know, Tim Kennedy is creating a horrible place for special forces guys to be right now, because now anybody that says they did anything, they're gonna be like, oh, well, did you know Tim Kennedy? He's a lying piece of shit. You know, that's how you're going to get lumped. And it takes people like you who did good work and did their job and was very forthcoming in everything you did, and isn't doing it to make millions of dollars and become the face of whatever. You know, you are going to be questioned because of Tim Kennedy.
The biggest difference between the Tim Kennedy debacle is every single fucking Green Berets out here saying, nope, this will not our fucking community. This is not happening in SF. And every single one have fucking voiced their opinion at that or public or on YouTube or on Instagram. Everyone has had something to say about it to an extent. That's the biggest difference, is we're not letting him get a pass. We're like, nope, this isn't accurate, and give him an ultimatum to the point where now I can't remember if it's accurate or not, but he's starting to come out and say, I never said I had this, I never said I had that. And it's like, dude, at the end of the day, like, your lies are going to catch up to you, and when they do, the only thing you're going to do is end up destroying yourself, right? And I know for a fact that the combat controller community, the AFSOC community, is 100% behind John Chapman, and they are fucking pissed, and they hope this gets fixed. What would righting the situation look like for you? Do you think anything's going to happen?
Well, yeah, here's what I do know. I know that and this is just from what happened with me with Job's investigation, that the power of the podcast is important. The people are getting their news sources now from podcasts and alternative news versus CNN. You know, typically this would have had to been on CNN or Fox News or somewhere for anybody to give a shit. But now people are tuning in to Green Beret podcast, Anti-Hero podcast, Valhalla VFT. People are showing up and listening to these guys because they're bringing out content that other places won't touch. And being someone who had no momentum going at all in my investigation into Job, to getting an opportunity to interview Rob O'Neill 3 times, first time questioning specifically details of his mission for the first time that no one's ever done, and getting into crack that little script that he has in his head for what he tells everybody every time in every interview. I broke that cycle, and that turned into opportunities to go on podcasts and get Job's information out and other stories, and attaching Rob O'Neill to Job Price, attaching Sean Ryan to Job Price, attaching Jocko to Job Price, so that people who were watching for Jocko learned more about Job Price. And that is the power of what your platform has. And that's what I'm hoping, is that you have a very large special operations community audience. And those people know people that are probably on that board. And if we can get enough people on that board getting enough heat for the problems that have been created by Bret Slabinski being a part of it and then featured in it, I'm hoping that it stops it all and they reevaluate. I would love to see John Chapman. He deserves to have one of the 200 displays. But I 100% want Bret Slabinski to not have one, because he doesn't deserve it. He stole John's valor, and that's what I believe we can do here. And I think the goal is, what I found is there's a lot of guys out there doing summaries of other people's podcasts, and that's it's a force multiplier.
Absolutely.
So that's the goal, is to get people to pick up on these podcasts, rebroadcast with their analysis and their ire, because most of these guys are former special operations guys, and get them to be the continuation of the echo, right? And get this heard by the people that need it. And we have until March. March is when the grand opening is.
Yeah. And I would say, to everybody watching, especially if you have a platform, you know what? If you don't stand for anything, you'll fucking fall for everything, right? And that's just the reality of it. You don't want to get your hands wet because you're worried about what your bullshit ass viewers are going to say. You're just as fucking bad. Because if you're on here, you have a responsibility. And if you're doing it for money because you're worried you might lose a few subscribers here and there, then you're fucking just as bad as fucking Slabinski, right? Because when it comes to what doing the right thing looks like fighting for fucking Chapman is the right thing. The dude has technically 2 Medal of fucking Honor. And you telling me he's not the first display? 2 fucking Medal of Honors. Save a shit ton of fucking lives. Mostly from the Army side. And some fucking Navy SEALs. And you're telling me, like, you're not willing to go to bat to make sure this guy gets what he deserves? Like, if you're one of those dudes...
Too. I mean,
yeah.
this was literally the worst condition you could possibly be in.
Yeah, like, dude, I've infill in those fucking snow on top of mountains, and that shit is not fucking fun at all. It is not a fun place to be. And if you don't have the balls to fucking fight for this, then you're fucking useless and you're worthless. But hopefully everything works out. We'll pump this out this evening and see what happens, if we get any traction. And if anything, man, it just shows another narrative, and it shows that there's still corruption amongst the military, right, at the highest level. And those that are choosing to ignore it just so they can make fucking money, like, I hope you sleep good at night, because at the end of the day, if that was you, you know damn well you would want somebody fighting for you, right? So
and
I appreciate you coming on, Matt. Yep, go ahead.
Just, you know, while this is a singular event we're talking about, the people behind the corruption, the people behind the disinformation, the people behind Bret Slavinsky, they're all interconnected. So the Tim Kennedy isn't on an island by himself. He's part of the Jocko Navy SEAL brand. They all have spread out into the communities and created this network of face heroes, right? Not real ones, just face heroes. And that's the important thing for people to recognize. This isn't just about the Medal of Honor and the Medal of Honor Museum. This is a larger, more complex problem that I've been talking about for years. But it's not a singular, isolated event. It's all interconnected. And Lori Chapman, Long Fritz, who is John's sister, she was gracious enough to let me take the ball with this. And not her spokesperson, but to tell this story on behalf of what she is feeling. And, you know, her mother, John's mother, is still going to go. They're all still going to go, but they're very disheartened by the fact that what they thought was going to be an honor for John is just turned into another Navy SEAL misinformation campaign. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, folks, watch the video, share it, and if you have any influence, let's get this wrong overturned so this man can get the fucking justice that he is due, right? You leave him on a fucking mountain. That wasn't fucking enough, right? You try to steal his valor, and all he did that day was save countless lives. You try to steal that shit. You try to deny him his Medal of Honor, right? And now you're taking this away from him and his family. That's just the most despicable shit that any human being could ever be. And there's a fucking special place in hell for anybody like that, right? So hopefully this helps in one way, shape, or form, Matt. I appreciate you coming on. Folks, appreciate you guys. Share the video. Until next time, folks, take care of yourselves.